a very warm welcome to the opening event of the 2013 British Council Literature Seminar, Writing in Public. For those of you who perhaps are attending for the first time a British Council event, I'll say a very, very brief word about what the British Council is. We're the UK's cultural relations organisation working in over 115 countries throughout the world. We build engagement and trust for the UK through the exchange of knowledge and ideas with people worldwide. We work in three major areas: education, English and the arts, to achieve our objectives, and the annual literature seminar is a flagship event in our calendar in terms of cultural relations and better links between the UK and Germany.
In the cold, his body was shrinking. He had no toes. They'd disappeared an hour ago. He had no feet. He had no hands, no nose. His ears were missing. His eyes made insectile clicks each time he blinked. They would freeze over if he gave them a chance. If you express it now, it's like, that's you forever. And
well, that paradoxical thing about internet culture, that it's instant and permanent at the same time.
Yeah.
I also think that there's a resistance for writers to become spokespeople, because you're putting yourself right there at the front instead of your stories.
I teach reading literature, but also teach writing literature. And I like the idea of the dialogues on stage, but also the workshops.
Workshops for me are always the highlight, I have to say. Yeah.
Readers, people in general, do look to authors not for guidance as to what they need to think, but what the authors themselves believe in.
The striking thing coming from Britain is the Kultur in German has kind of a sort of seriousness and a resonance that's quite refreshing in the British context. You don't have to justify everything in terms of, the economics and the profit. You don't have to explain the value of cultural activities. But there's lots of people who work in finance now live around where we live in London, and the various things are striking about it. One is that you never see the men in the day, ever. It's like a work of feminist science fiction, because all the men have been zapped by an alien death ray, but they're continuing to breed, because they still have children who are being put in these huge SUVs and driven off to school.
I wanted to give the reader something of that experience, which I think is the genuine experience of, my desire is always to make fiction more like life, and the fact that actually we don't remember perfectly. In Buddenbrooks there's this great sort of ledger which the family has, in which all important events in the family history are sort of written down, but most people don't have that.
It was very inspiring, because you got the impression that there was no special one story that had to be told, but lots of people have very different voices, and everybody has to find their way of telling their story.
The participants of the seminar are of such intellectual quality that the discussions are, so far advanced. It's a pleasure, and I feel like I'm learning things from members of the audience who have an incredibly wide reading experience and interest. That it's a very wide-ranging seminar.
But actually, some of the novels that are most effective and may be looked on in a few decades' time as something more radical and having more to say about what's going on now. It's also because they're trying to do it stylistically or shake up the form of the novel and do something different with it. But we're not quite, we haven't quite got that in focus yet.
Maybe it's worth giving a shout out for the formal questions, actually, because there is that too. I think Joyce, at the end of his life, in talking about Ulysses, said it was too newsy. There was too much news in it, and you can see what he means. There was too many streets and too many people with real names and real jobs. And of course, his ambition at the end, Alan, was to write a novel after Finnegan's Wake, to write a novel all about the sea, where it was just the language and the rhythm. Yes. Could you conceive of a novel that might have your name on it, that, as it were, where all social milieu vanished? To join me in thanking these lovely people for joining the discussion.